The long road ahead for the Pittsburgh Pirates starts right now. My name is Kevin Barral from the KO Sports Corner. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all our social medias that are all linked below, as well as Fish Stripes, which as well will be linked below. And as well, make sure to check out our last MLB offseason episode 1, which was the Chicago Cubs. That will be linked below, or you could go into our YouTube channel, subscribe, and check out the last video, which was that one. So today we are doing the Pittsburgh Pirates, a team that did not end the season well, over 100 losses. A tough season for the Pirates, to be honest. I mean, it's the start of a rebuild, the start of something new for them, and they're getting it started, and they're doing a good job, to be honest. I mean, they have Bryan Hayes, you have O'Neill, you have some very good pieces, and we're going to start looking at last season's roster, including the first basemen, which include Colin Moran, Michael Chavis, Wilmer Defoe, and Yoshi Tsutsugo. Really, the guy that really stands out for me here is Colin Moran. I think he's going to be that starter next season. He's a big guy. He's been with the team. He's young. He knows what he has to do. He's going to be one of those, I guess, fundamental pieces, at least to get the rebuild going. Then you have Michael Chavis, who I really do like. They acquired him in the trade deadline. He's young. He had a pretty good season. Then you have Wilmer Defoe, Yoshi Tsutsugo, who are actually really good depth pieces. I like Tsutsugo. I know about him a lot more than Wilmer Defoe. So that's something good to note about first base. Now let's move on to second base, which is Michael Chavis, Wilmer Defoe, Kevin Newman, and Hoyt Park. Obviously, the big name that stands out here would be Kevin Newman. Kevin Newman is, I guess, the shortstop right now of the team. Very good player, very young. Still has time to go in through the major leagues. And you have Michael Chavis, who was at second base, I think, most of the time throughout his time in Pittsburgh, his second season. He does have some arbitration. He's not a free agent next season, so that's good. Then you have Wilmer Defoe, Hoyt Park, who are some of the other complementary pieces, depth pieces for this team. They have a lot of depth, which is good, but bad at the same time because their depth isn't that good. So let's move on to third base. Third base is really where a lot of the big names come in. And I think the only real big name here would be Bryan Hayes. Very good player. He's the youngest guy on that team. He's the top prospect of that team until he moved up and then graduated, obviously. But then you have Colin Moran, Wilmer Defoe, Michael Chavis, all guys we know. But I think the guy I really wanted to talk about here is Bryan Hayes, who had himself a good season. He was overall good. He did have a long time with injury, came back and really just played a good game of baseball. He was solid. I mean, a lot of good things to talk about. Some negatives, obviously. I didn't watch the Pirates much this season, but from stats and what I've seen, I saw him play the Marlins. He was very solid, very solid. There's not much more to say about it. Now it's time to build off that rookie season, go into next season and see how it goes for him because his development is very crucial to what this rebuild could look like. So moving on to shortstop, let's go there right now, and that includes a couple guys here: Kevin Newman, Wilmer Defoe, Cole Tucker, another big piece of that team, and O'Neill Cruz, which is their young prospect who is number 1 or number 2. I'm gonna put that on the screen as well on the pipeline, MLB pipeline. The biggest name here is Kevin Newman. I think he's gonna stay with the team a little bit longer than other guys that have getting dealt. You have Wilmer Defoe, obviously, already talked about him. Cole Tucker is a guy who could play many positions. He played mostly the outfield. I went to a Pittsburgh Pirate versus Miami Marlins game. He was at right field. So you could kind of see what they're trying to do with him, more of a platoon type of guy who come in, come out, and play different positions. Then you have O'Neill Cruz, who is one of their top prospects in the MLB pipeline. Very interesting player, nothing to say the least. Very tall guy. He's a shortstop, could also play third base. If the DH does enter, I think he could really be a candidate for that because you have Kevin Newman. You have a really good infield. I do like what Pittsburgh has in the infield. Very good. That's just getting more development going on the pitching side. We'll get into that later. But yeah, O'Neill Cruz, a very solid piece of this team, very good prospect. Spring training is going to be a big time for him to see what he could do hitting wise, and then if he could get some defense going. So we'll see what happens there on the shortstop. Let's move on to the catchers. Only 2 names coming into the catchers: Jacob Stallings, Michael Perez. I mean, the all other real big name we'll get into, Peyton Henry, was the number 1 draft pick of this team. There's not much more to say here. Jacob Stallings is one hell of a player. He's gonna win the Gold Glove. He's gonna be a candidate for that. Then you have Michael Perez. Nothing real big on this guy. Just a normal, solid backup catcher who didn't have much of a season last year. Really didn't put up big numbers. I'll put the stats on the screen, but I mean, besides that, Michael Perez is nothing crazy. I mean, he'll probably be the starter next year if Jacob Stallings gets dealt. I do have a lot of trade scenarios, and I'll tell you which one I like the most or which one I think will actually happen. So, yeah, Michael Perez is a very good option here. You go with anyone here. Michael Perez is a good option for that backup spot as of right now for what they're trying to do with this team. Jacob Stallings, once again, I think he'll get a lot of trade traction. He has arbitration, or I think he's some years of control as well. So it's getting interesting to see what happens with a guy like Stallings, what the market looks for him when it comes to trading, because he's not a free agent. The catcher market on the free agent doesn't look too hot. So a lot of trading will be happening. You have Stallings, you have Mitch Garver, you have Carson Kelly, you also have Wilson Contreras. So those are also names really to look out for getting dealt, and Stallings is one of the biggest names out in that market. So yeah, let's move on to the starting pitching. I mean, not much to talk about there, but we'll get into that in the bullpen, which yikes. Moving on to the starting pitchers, there are some names here: Chad Cole, Steve Brault, JT Burbaker, Trevor Cahill, Chase DeYoung, Mitch Keller, Bryce Wilson, Dylan Peters, former Marlin, and Max Kranick. Literally, the only names I really could tell you I memorized here and actually know are Chad Cole, Dylan Peters, and I think Mitch Keller. I've heard of his name once or twice. Bryce Wilson maybe once, but besides that, I have no idea who these guys are. I think they're really going to go in there and try to develop these guys, or not develop really, but replace them. I like Chad Cole. Dylan Peters had a decent stint with the Marlins, a little bit worse than usual, but I mean, besides that, I remember Dylan Peters at one point was considered a big time guy for the Marlins in that 2019 season, but besides that, he wasn't really anything bigger. I think it was the 2018 season. So yeah, I mean, then you have to chase DeYoung, Mitch Keller, who those guys I think they'll either get rid of or just keep on the team as depth. Trevor Cahill, same thing. JT Burbaker. I mean, maybe some of these guys really did have good seasons, and I'm just not looking at them. I'll probably put stats on the screen of each guy just so you could start looking at what they've done. So yeah, we'll get into the relief pitchers as well now. I'm sorry to show you this, but literally Kyle Keller is the only one I know here, and Shelby Miller. But I'm gonna read off the names: Chris Jansen, Sam Howard, Blake Setterland, David Bednar, Jose Oviedo, Jose Luis Oviedo, Jose Soriano, Chasen Shreve. I actually do know him. Dwayne Underwood Jr., Anthony Banda, Shelby Miller, Kyle Keller, Cody Ponce. There's a couple other names that really weren't known, so I didn't put them on here. But yeah, these are the bullpen guys of this team. Really didn't do much. I mean, to get over 100 losses, they were a big part of why. Blowing games, could have been just not good. So yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say on that end. I think bullpen is going to be a big thing of what they look into when it comes to either trading or free agency. So yeah, and there's some very low key names when you really look at it that could help this team out immediately and make them a better bullpen. Even though it won't result in many more wins, it will result in a good bullpen. So getting to the outfield, we have Ben Gamel, Anthony Alford, Yoshi Tsutsugo, and Michael Chavis, all guys we've heard of. The only real guy in here is Ben Gamel, who was whatever this season. It was a little bit weird to see him sign with a team like the Pirates after being in Milwaukee for a year, going into having a pretty decent season with the team, also being with the Mariners, who I guess were trying to win. Then you have Anthony Alford, a guy who has some years of control left, I'm pretty sure, some arbitration years. So we'll see what happens in that end. So yeah, outfield, not much more. You guys know about Tsutsuga, Michael Chavis, all guys who could actually play the outfield. Cole Tucker was in the outfield this season, but they list him as a shortstop. So some other things to mention there. Going into the minor league guys, though, they do have a very good minor league prospect system. They have a good farm system too. I mean, there's some big names in there. We'll get into that right now. Which the first one obviously will be, you have Peyton Henry, who was the number one draft pick in the last draft that occurred. Everyone thought they were going to go Marcelo Meyer. They went with the guy Peyton Henry, who's a catcher. Made a lot of sense to do this. Then you have Quinn Priester, right-handed pitcher. O'Neal Cruz, which we've already talked about. Nick Gonzalez, a second baseman. Leover Peguero, which is a shortstop. And then finally, Roansy Contreras, who is a right-handed pitcher. All guys who I could see in the majors in two maybe years, 2, 3, 4 years. I mean, there's not really expected timeline. Peyton Henry would be the guy. Henry Davis would be the guy that you would want up as quickly as possible into the major leagues, because that guy is going to be one hell of a player for the Pirates. They need to catch as quickly as possible. So give him 2 to 3 years. I think his estimated time date is 2023. So I'll put that. I'll tell you. I'll for sure correct it on the screen now if that isn't the time. And for podcast viewers, I guess I'll update you now in the future. I guess
he comes up in
because I do want to
2024,
put this
guys.
on podcast. I want to start putting this on Apple Podcasts, which you guys could check out. It's KO Podcast right now, but I think eventually I will change it to either my actual name or we could change it to KO Sports Corner. So we'll make changes on that now. or this coming week. I think this will be the first one coming back up. So yeah, let's get into actual moves that you guys want to see. I think the first big one includes Bryan Reynolds. The guy who has a lot of years of control left. I think it's like 4 years of control. So it makes sense to do that right now and maybe trade him, and you'll get a lot of value. Like when I say value, it's a lot. Let's get into deal number one, which is trading Bryan Reynolds. When we get into movement, we have to talk about needs. So the first one is acquire young talent. They really should go for guys who are young, and we have a lot of those guys. And then we have trade valuable pieces for prospects. We're obviously going to do that, Stallings, Reynolds. We're going to be guys to for sure consider trading Kevin Newman, if anything. Then start defining the pitching rotation. I think that's one of the biggest issues. They don't have a clear cut pitching rotation, have a lot of older guys, a lot of vets up there. And I think they're going to sign a lot more vets this season as well and pair them up with young guys. If there's something I could tell you as a Marlins fan and seeing rebuilds, is the Marlins did that for a while. I mean, who can I even mention first? There's so many guys. Some names I could really mention, like Jose Urania, was on that team. Wei Ying Shen was on that team at the time. Good Ryan Stanek, Sergio Romo was on that team. So Miami really did find a way to pair older guys with young guys. And then eventually now you see what the Marlins have. It's one of the top rotations in the league. Alcantara, Pablo Lopez. You have Sixto in there, Edward Cabrera, Jesus Luzardo. So it's a very interesting type of rotation that the Marlins have going. But Pittsburgh, I think it's going to take them at least 1 or 2 years to get that down, especially now in the trade deadline. If none of these guys are producing for you, just start trading for low weight prospects, or they're having a good season and you're not winning, you go try to trade them for a not top tier prospect, but for the mid to higher tier prospects. Defining which young prospects you will call up. I mean, that's one of the biggest important things. You don't want to call up a guy that's not ready yet. I mean, Henry Davis, it's going to take him time to be ready. So you won't call him up yet. O'Neill, you could possibly call up already in spring training if you make the move. So they're guys who you really have to be careful with what you call up and what you don't call up, because that could really ruin the guy's career. Maybe they need more time in the majors and then, in the minors to really develop what they want to do. And I could, as a Marlins fan, Isan Diaz is the biggest example of that. Lewis Brinson, Monte Harrison came up, didn't have enough chances, but probably will come back. And then finally bring in some veterans that can help you on prospects. You always need a veteran in that locker room. Right now, they don't really have one. Their biggest veteran, I guess you could say, is Bryan Reynolds, but Jacob Stallings is another guy who I guess would help them. They lost that Francisco Cervelli type of guy. So now it's who do you bring in? Because Michael Chavis is still pretty young. He was a top pick in the draft. I think it was like first or second round, but then besides that, he doesn't have much more experience. I guess you could say he won a World Series, but not much more there. So I would say bring in some older guys who could really do help out there, and they could help brew the young players and prospects that they have in the minor league systems and up in the majors. So yeah, now we go to Bryan Reynolds trade, which I think Pittsburgh Pirates are going to be a little mad, but other teams are going to be very happy to hear this. I was going to include the Marlins in this as one of the top teams who were in discussions at the trade deadline to acquire Bryan Reynolds. This would actually be a very good trade. Max Meyer, Jose Salas, Kyle Nicholas, and Connor Scott. Max Meyer is the number 2 prospect on the rankings of MLB Pipeline. Jose Salas is top 15. Kyle Nicholas is top 20. Connor Scott is in the bottom tiers of the top 30. But all top 30 guys for Bryan Reynolds, for 4 years of Bryan Reynolds and hopefully more. This makes a lot of sense on the end of the Pittsburgh Pirates. You get a great shortstop infielder. You get pitching, which you very much desire. Max Meyer and Kyle Nicholas, who could both make their MLB debuts in that season. And then you have Connor Scott finally. I mean, you look at it, it makes a lot of sense to go with this trade. Connor Scott's a very good outfielder, too. I mean, there are comparisons of him to Kyle Tucker. They went to the same high school, and he could very much help in that DH spot. I would give him another year, though, in the minor leagues. Max Meyer could come up right now if he really wanted to. Jose Salas, you have to give him 2 to 3 more years in the minor leagues. But Miami gets Bryan Reynolds. They're trying to win now, and that's what's going to help them make that move, and it'll work. Miami's my trade number 1 and move number 1, which is trade Bryan Reynolds for prospects and young talent. The second team that would really make sense is the Brewers. I know the Brewers were in talks as well, or was one of the rumored teams. You'd give up Garrett Mitchell, Ethan Small, Corey Howell, Tyler Black would all go to the Brewers in exchange for Bryan Reynolds. Garrett Mitchell is the number 1 prospect on that team. It was either him or the number 2 prospect. I'll show on the screen. I don't remember the name right now, but Garrett Mitchell's a really good player. He was from UCLA. He's a college guy, I'm pretty sure. It makes sense. Ethan Small, a pitcher, Corey Howell, and Tyler Black are position players that could help out maybe 1 or 2 years. Garrett Mitchell, I think, could come up maybe even next season. Ethan Small, same thing. I mean, you really look at it. This makes sense for the Pirates. They're not going to win it, and they're not going to win it. They're not going to compete in 2 to 3 years. Give them 4 or 5 years, and then they'll be real competitive. I mean, you're breaking this thing from the bottom up, so it makes sense to do that. This is another Bryan Reynolds trade, which really makes sense. Let's move on to trade number 3. Bryan Reynolds to the Braves, another team that was rumored by MLB Rumors around the trade deadline. You would give up Drew Waters, Michael Harris, Dylan Dodd. All of these guys are possibly coming up in 2 years, maybe even 1, because of the development that Atlanta does. Is they get guys quickly moving. And I was looking at pipeline, and like all of these guys are in AAA or AA already, and it's like crazy to think. I think the only one is Dylan Dodd. Maybe Michael Harris isn't even up yet, and one of them is in rookie ball. I'll put up their prospect rankings or whatever on the screen as well, because I think that's something interesting to note. But Drew Waters is, I think, the more MLB ready guy out of the 3. So and I'm not going to go always the Marlins on a trade. So I think I went Brewers here, if I'm correct, when it comes to Bryan Reynolds. I'll put that on the screen once the time comes, and I'll show you guys my final lineup. But the Bryan Reynolds trade is going to happen, and I feel like it's going to happen. It's going to take a lot of insisting from the other teams, but it could really happen. Let's move on. So moving on to my second move is moving from Jacob Stallings. I think this is really going to happen. I don't see him in the long-term future of the team. You have a very good young prospect, your number 1 prospect, Henry Davis. So I'm always going to include the Marlins, a team that it's not really been talked about, but buddy Craig Mish over here has been saying Jacob Stallings could be an option for the Marlins. Dax Fulton, Evan Fitter, that is a very good trade. Evan Fitter is only 19, I think, and Dax Fulton is extremely young. He was with the Hammerheads this season in low A. So yeah, this is not the best trade, but I think it's a trade that'll get it done, because Jacob Stallings does have value, but not much. Evan Fitter, Dax Fulton, I think both of these guys are in low A. So you give them time, maybe in 3 years, they'll be up right with the time you're going to start maybe being a little bit more competitive. So make this trade now, and it'll help you in the future. For the Marlins, it's a win now trade. For the Pirates, it's win in 2 to 3 years trade. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Red Sox receive Red Sox receive Jacob Stallings. The Red Sox in this trade would make a lot of sense. You probably move on from Christian Vasquez, get an upgrade in Jacob Stallings. In this case, you would get Jeter Downs and cash considerations for Jacob Stallings. Jeter Downs is a top 5 prospect in their minor league system. I mean, maybe take a little more insisting from the Pirates end, but Jeter Downs is a really good prospect. I'll put stats on his minor league season on the screen. Jacob Stallings, obviously Gold Glove catcher. It makes a lot of sense for Boston. Very good hitter as well offensively. So this is a very good fit for the Boston Red Sox. I like it a lot. So we'll see what happens in that. The Brewers are a team that really isn't that good on the catcher. They only have Omar Narvaez, which isn't nothing crazy. So I think they'll get Ethan Small, David Hamilton, and you give up Jacob Stallings and you give him to the Brewers. I mean, I'm not the biggest trade geek here. I'm not the greatest at making trades either, but I mean, I think this is what would make sense. Just looking at the top 30, because Jacob Stallings is obviously worth a top 30 guy in that prospects when it comes to minor leagues, and what you give up for a guy like Jacob Stallings is Gold Glove, very good offensively, very good defensively. He had actually a record of consecutive games without a pass ball. So this is a very good defensive catcher as well. So let's move on to trade number 4. Trade number 4 is sending Jacob Stallings over to the Houston Astros in exchange for Alex Santos and Matthew Barefoot. These guys are not too much known, but they're in the top 30. They're both pitchers. I'm almost certain to say that. I'll put it on the screen. Obviously, I'm going to put stats on the screen. I'm not going to keep repeating that, but yeah, Stallings going to make sense. You have Martin Maldonado. I think you get an upgrade with Stallings when it comes to either maybe even having like a backup catcher. You're in the American League here, so you could really rely off the DH, even though that would be more of a Tucker type of thing. You would still use Jacob Stallings in that end. When it comes to the final trade, when it comes to trading guys, Chris McMahon and cash considerations over to the Rockies for Jacob Stallings. They were very desperate for a catcher. Stallings would make some kind of sense there. This team's future doesn't look the best, but you could give it a couple years. I think you could still help a team like the Rockies. They're a very good home team in Coors Field. They're not the best away. Maybe they bring back Trevor Story somehow. They insist him to come back. So we'll see what happens on that end. But yeah, this is a very decent trade. Nothing crazy. They get a good pitcher and they get some cash that they could use to bring in some other minor league guys or use that on international prospects. I don't know. But yeah, let's go into move number 3, which is a very interesting one here. Sign relievers, Pittsburgh. Sign relievers. Here's some very good options. All of them, which makes sense. Hanzo Robles, Blake Parker, Pierce Johnson, Alex Claudio, Jose Alvarez. All guys who aren't very much known, but are guys who've made impacts, especially Jose Alvarez on the Giants, Alex Claudio, Pierce Johnson. You really look at those guys, and they're very, very underrated players who make a lot of sense to bring in. And they can maybe even stick around for more than 1 year. Hanzel is just a guy who's more of a journeyman at this point. He's just moving around. I think just bring him in on a 1 year minor league contract, which I think you could really do for everyone, maybe except Jose Alvarez, who's had a pretty good season with the Giants. But besides that, I like what Pittsburgh has there to options to bring in. So yeah, let's go to move number 4. Sign outfielders, Pittsburgh. Sign them outfielders. You need them. Larry Garcia, Jorge Soler, Jurickson Profar, Eddie Rosario, Billy Hamilton. All very good options. Jorge Soler is, I think, one of the more likely ones when you even look at it, because Braves are probably not going to bring him back. I mean, it's more of a 1 year rental type of thing, unless Acuna's injury is more of an extensive injury that's going to let me, take him out of the field for a while. And you about to bring back Soler to bring back production from Acuna. And Luis Garcia, another DH guy. He's not a DH, actually. Well, yeah, he could be, but he's more of a utility option. Trips to Profar. This would only be if he opts out of that contract. I don't think he will. Eddie Rosario, another guy who really blew up for the Braves and the Indians this season. Then you have Billy Hamilton, more of a journeyman type of guy. It's more of a fill-in type of player in there. So, yeah, sign some outfielders, Pittsburgh. I think it'll help. All right, now that we went through some moves, we're going to go into expectations. 50 to 65 wins makes sense for a rebuilding team. That would be actually really good if they get 65 wins. Define the pitching rotation. I didn't include bringing in many pitchers because they have so many already on their roster. I would assume they just go with what they have already. Or they bring in a guy like maybe a Jose Ureno, maybe even a Julio Teheran. I thought I did make that, but I guess I didn't. See who fits best behind home plate. They're going to be experimenting with catchers. Hey, Jorge Alfaro maybe goes to Pittsburgh. Who knows? Maybe even Chad Wallach, one of those older guys. Yeah, see who fits behind the plate and just play baseball. Just play baseball the fun way. You're not trying to win, and you're not trying to win the World Series. You're not going to win it. You're not even going to make the playoffs. But I mean, maybe something miraculous happens. I know I always do a hot take, and my hot take will be, I don't know. Pirates are a couple games out of the wild card. They're competing for it, and they're buyers at the deadline. Let's do that. I mean, this is a team that I'm not going to say is going to surprise anyone because they really won't. I love their infield. Colin Moran. You have Michael Chavis, Kevin Newman, Tyler O'Neill. And then you also have this other guy, Bryan Hayes. So, yeah, we're going to go into the final lineup, but expectations-wise, they're not really high. It's just more of a development season, see what they do. It's really your second year of your rebuild. So, yeah, this team isn't going to win in many years, but they do have some good players in here that could probably stick around for 4 or 5 years. All right, final lineup. The infield includes Colin Moran at first base, Michael Chavis at second, Kevin Newman at shortstop, Bryan Hayes at the third base, and Michael Perez at the catcher. Nothing real new here. I love this infield. I don't know why. And now that I'm starting to look at it, they're very good players, all of them. Colin Moran had a pretty good season. Michael Chavis, Kevin Newman, Bryan Hayes, all of those had great seasons. Bryan Hayes is going to build off of it. And then you have Michael Perez. I mean, give him a chance, see what he does. Maybe you sign a Jorge Alfaro. I guess Miami's probably going to release him. Or you go after a very low-end type of prospect and throw him in there, which Marlins have been known to do. Pittsburgh might do that themselves. So, use the Marlins as an example when it comes to catching is not the best thing, but I mean, it's obviously something you could look at because look at Nick Fortes, Pete Henry, who's done pretty good. All right. So as you see, I went with the Bryan Reynolds trade in the outfield. Garrett Mitchell traded for Bryan Reynolds. You have Jorge Soler via free agency. And then you have Anthony Alford at your outfield. O'Neill Cruz would be the DH. And then you have Roansy Contreras or Chad Cole as your starter. That would probably have to be, you bring up Roansy Contreras, who's your best pitcher in the minor leagues. That's pretty much it, folks. I mean, there's not much more to say. But yeah, quick announcement. I think you guys may know where I'm going with who my next team is going to be on the rebuild. But if you guys didn't know, it's the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to go through them. They actually have a very interesting team. I like a lot of their pieces. We'll get into that obviously later. But yeah, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. I mean, on the raw recording is a 28-minute recording. So you know how long I take to make these little thumbnails and really do think about trades because I don't want to make really bad trades, which maybe one or two of these are pretty bad at some point. I'll probably get that in the comments section. But once again, thank you guys for 200 subs. I mean, we finally cracked it for, I think, almost 1 year of this channel. We're at 200. Here's to 300, man. Let's get to 300 more. I can't thank you guys enough. all the work that I've done with this channel. I know I've been very lazy with it lately, but I'm trying to bring it back. As you guys all know, I'm going to bring back the podcast on Apple. So make sure to tune into that because I know you guys will for sure love that more maybe than just seeing my face here and just talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates now. Maybe, I know I'm going to NL East next because I want to talk about my Marlins. I will bring a special guest for that. I have some people planned for that I want to bring in. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. Let's get to 300 subs, guys. That's the goal. Subscribe to Apple Podcasts. That's in the link. There's no way you can't miss it. I'm gonna try to update the Discord link. I think there's a way I could do that. So yeah, like, subscribe, follow us on the socials. My name's Kevin Barral. Peace out. Have a great day. Today's Saturday. Sunday's tomorrow. Sunday football. We have Dolphins in London, and then we have some other great games. Peace out, guys.